All right, I just want to take a few minutes here to promote my upcoming course that I'll be teaching on transformations of consciousness through time. This is the sign-up page to enroll, and I'll put the link down in the description box below. So this will be an 8-week course that we will meet every Saturday for 8 weeks from May 14th until July 2nd. And that'll be at noon my time, which is Mountain Standard Time. And we're going to discuss the works of 6 thinkers in this course, and I've not selected them randomly at all. I've selected them in pairs so that there are 3 groups of pairs. And the first pair has to do with Rudolf Steiner and also Sri Aurobindo. And so they represent a sort of religious approach to the evolution of consciousness. Steiner coming out of the tradition of esoteric Christianity. This is the text we'll be reading of his, An Outline of Esoteric Science, which is pretty much his best book, in my opinion, and kind of like his Bible. Both his and Sri Aurobindo's views are very cosmogonic. They show the evolution of consciousness as it occurs through these various stages. For Rudolf Steiner, the solar system has gone through 4 different transformations, or incarnations, as he puts it. The Saturn phase, the Sun phase, the Moon phase, and now it's in the Earth phase. And for Sri Aurobindo, everything is unfolded from Brahman, the Satchidananda, being consciousness bliss of Brahman that has used the supramental as a kind of tool or instrument in order to create the cosmos. There are certain comparisons, I think, there with Plotinus. And then so we'll start with those 2. So these will be the texts that we'll read. You don't have to read the entire text in order to participate in the course, because I've already pre-recorded videos detailing the cosmogonies and cosmologies and the spiritual ideas of these thinkers. So the student ideally will have watched the video. They're roughly about 45 minutes pre-recorded, and I've uploaded them to the site. So you watch the video, and then we meet, and I'll give a brief talk, maybe for 20 minutes, synopsizing that week's theme, and then I'll throw a question out, and then we'll discuss these thinkers for 2 hours during that period. So we'll also do Jean Gebser. So the next pair is Jean Gebser and Erich Neumann. Neumann's book is The Origins and History of Consciousness, and Gebser is The Ever-Present Origin. Now we come down to the plane of psychology. In a way, Jean Gebser, he's a philosopher, but kind of a reformed psychologist. He was out in Switzerland teaching. He was very familiar with Jung and knew the Jungian world, and his book, The Ever-Present Origin, is kind of a rebellion against that world. But he sees the history of the universe unfolding strictly in terms of stages of consciousness, the archaic, or let's say the hominid structure, and then the magical comes in with the Paleolithic. Then the mythical consciousness comes in during the Neolithic, during the period of the goddess cults. Then its second phase gets up and running of the mythical consciousness structure with the Bronze Age, Mesopotamia on the one hand, Egypt on the other. And then by the time we get to the Greeks, it moves into the mental or rational consciousness structure. That gets up and running, and that goes all the way down to the 19th century, whereupon we get the integral consciousness structure, which is a very spiritual consciousness structure that is able to integrate all previous structures of consciousness and to use them in whatever way that you will. And then so the Jungian Erich Neumann looks at the evolution of consciousness in very similar terms, except he's really using primarily the mythical consciousness structure combined with the mental consciousness structure in order to show how culture has evolved through the stages and has arrived at the hero myth. Originally matriarchal, you get the separation of the world parents, the original cosmic Ouroboros unconscious, which is then repeated ontogenetically at the level of the individual, who undergoes an ontogenetic recapitulation of separating the ego from the mother, that is to say the unconscious. This is a very difficult process, especially for males. And the hero myth pictures this process, and also the victory of the rational mental consciousness structure as the hero slays the dragon mother. On the one hand, the terrible devouring mother, That's the unconscious. The child's fear of the dark is a classic illustration of this. But also the slaying of the father. If the dragon is male, then what is slain is the father. That is to say, cultural values that have to be re-evaluated by the hero who comes along. Like I think of Luke Skywalker slaying Darth Vader, let's say. That's the terrible father in that case, where slaying the mother is tantamount to harnessing and controlling one's impulses and instincts, so that one is not just blown about by the winds of passion, let's say. There's a stable consciousness structure there, with the ego in a solid concrete relationship to the unconscious. And then so we have, with Taylor Desjardins, the last pair, with Taylor Desjardins and Arthur Young, we come down to the plane of science. Both men were scientists. Even though Taylor was a Catholic priest, he was nonetheless a paleontologist, specifically a paleoanthropologist, who participated in some significant discoveries in China at Shokochen, which is the earliest site that we have for the domestication of fire. A Promethean event has taken place there, and Chardin participated in it. And with Chardin, his model moves, it's very similar in certain respects to Aurobindo's. Aurobindo's moves from matter to life to mind, then to the supramental, whereas Chardin's moves from pre-life to life, then to what he calls new genesis, as in nous, the Greek word for mind, N-O-U-S. New genesis, and then we're moving onward towards something that he calls Christogenesis. And then so we'll look at his model, and then that also of Arthur Young, the reflexive universe, evolution of consciousness. Arthur Young was an engineer. He lived to be about 89 years old, and he designed the Bell helicopter. But he also came up with this wonderful model of the evolution of consciousness in terms of light. Light gets trapped in matter at the level of the subatomic, then the level of the atomic, then finally at the molecular level, it loses its freedom and becomes trapped. And then through the production of plants, animals, and humans, it reattains its original freedom, especially through transformations of human consciousness, such as, let's say, outlined for us by Jean Gebser. Those transformations of consciousness release the inner light. Yoga has been described as transformations of the inner light, which is one way of looking at it. So light is liberated by human consciousness through higher thinking, metaphysical thinking, spiritual thinking, and so forth. In a way, Arthur Young has retrieved the Manichaean myth that light has become trapped in matter and that it is the job of human beings to liberate the light that is trapped in matter. So each one of these thinkers has a different kind of arc, and they come in pairs. I've grouped them in pairs, and so this is what we will spend 8 weeks discussing. We'll go through all 6 of these guys, and we'll have a great time. So here's the site. This is the first course that I'll be teaching for my school, the John David Ebert School for the Study of Culture, Cosmology, and the Arts. And I'll put the link to enroll in this in the description box. There are a couple of different payment plans too. All right, I'll leave it there.